They're crimes that shock the world. 7 young lives cut short by a serial killer known as the Backpacker Murderer.
I'm Bill. I'm James. How do you go?
Deborah.
Bill.
Hi.
When he strikes in the same place and targets the same kind of people. Hitchhikers he picks up heading south from Sydney.
Okay, wait.
5 are foreign, 2 Australian. All die in the remote Belanglo State Forest in the most cruel and depraved circumstances. When the killer, Ivan Milat, is eventually unmasked, he's sent to jail for life without ever confessing. Yet to this day, argument rages about whether he acted alone or was helped by one of his 12 surviving brothers and sisters. What we're about to reveal are some of the bizarre secrets of the Milat family, including new information that Ivan Milat did confess guilt to his mother before she died, and that he'd had a sexual relationship with a sister who's been linked to the murders.
Ivan was deceitful, super deceitful. He didn't have a burning light in his soul. It would have gone out.
Australia's most notorious criminal family. Generation after generation, on the wrong side of the wall. Crime Investigation Australia, Fabrics of Crime. April 1992. 2 British girls, Joanne Walters and Carolyn Clark, are hitching from Sydney to Melbourne when they're picked up by a man who calls himself Bill. At first he seems friendly enough, all muscle and piercing blue eyes, a typical knockabout Aussie bloke. Yet all of a sudden his mood turns. He veers off the Hume Highway into the Belanglo Forest. He produces a gun.
Rip your fucking head off! You don't want to die here. We got a couple of hours of fun to have yet.
Having promised they won't be hurt, Joanne watches as Carolyn is forced to her knees. Her death by shooting is at least mercifully quick, though he keeps pumping bullets into her skull. Joanne's killing with a hunting knife is agonizingly slow. The knife plunges into her spine. She's still alive, but paralyzed, a trick her captor evidently learned from a mate who fought in Vietnam. Then he rapes her, and when he's finished, tears into her flesh again and again until her life finally ebbs away. And it's over. Bill, of course, is Ivan Milat. But did he act alone? And if he didn't, who was with him? Nearly 2 decades on, that is still a mystery.
There was good evidence to suggest that the girls were killed in such different ways that this was done by 2 different people. I can only say that the evidence still supports that.
But it's what the courts say that leave this case wide open. They choose to ignore the police and keep the 2-killer theory alive. At Ivan's original trial, the presiding judge says that he believes it's inevitable that the prisoner was not alone.
Everyone's entitled to their own opinion.
And the spectre of 2 killers is raised again 2 years later when Ivan's case comes up for appeal.
Bearing in mind that some of the victims were travelling in pairs and having regard to the way in which they appear to have been bound or otherwise restrained, it was possible that more than one person was involved.
Well, I think he's got it correct. I mean, there is a possibility. He doesn't say it's a probability, and that's a big difference.
Today we executed search warrants on 7 locations.
The man who heads the investigation always maintains there's one killer and not enough evidence to charge anyone else.
My own view is that Ivan committed the murders by himself.
But if there is a second killer, who is it?
It seemed as though the second person would be submissive to the first one and could be a younger brother.
The finger always comes back to the family, especially Ivan's younger brother, Richard.
I never had nothing to do with it and never knew anything about it.
But Richard Milat not only boasts to others at the time about being involved, some of the victims' belongings are found on his property, including Carolyn Clark's tent and Joanne Walters' sleeping bag.
I never killed anybody. I never knew about them being killed until the police come here.
But the trouble with the Milats is they've never believed that old saying about honesty being the best policy. Richard confirms the family code has always been, if you can't think of anything to say, think of a good lie.
Just because it's our code don't make it any part of the truth, but does it?
It implies, though, that you'll tell a lie before you'll tell the truth.
Could do. That you could imply that.
You're always saying, I'm innocent, I'm innocent. Even if you're guilty, you're innocent.
Which begs the question, can you ever really believe a Milat? Whatever the truth about the murders, this isn't your usual family, and never has been. Hard as it's to imagine now, the outer western suburbs of Sydney in the 1950s and 60s are still largely rural. The developers have yet to move in, and small allotments dot the landscape where houses now stretch as far as the eye can see. On one, a Croatian immigrant by the name of Ivan Milat ekes out a living, growing tomatoes with the help of his older children. He's a hard man from a hard part of the world who isn't what you'd call an ideal father.
Don't you bloody see what you done? You cost me money. Can you stop coming here?
I don't know if Dad showed any love or the right kind of guidance. He was too busy doing his own agenda, which was working hard. I was thinking, how many times did Dad ever take us out? And I can't remember, but it'd only be 3 or 4 times. I remember going to Manly once. I can never remember going to a picture show with Dad or anywhere at all.
With wife Margaret, a devout Roman Catholic who obeys the church on contraception, there will eventually be 14 children, 10 boys and 4 girls.
I want you to wake up in the morning tomorrow and go in the market and sell this bloody tomato. Yes, 5 and go and sell this bloody tomato in the market. Get up your bum and go and sell it.
If Dad is tough and remote, Mum is the opposite.
Shirley, you want some more soup?
Yeah, a little bit. Yes.
The glue that binds the family together, Margaret still evokes strong emotions in her children 9 years after her death.
She was very good to the kids. We're always well dressed, super lioness defending of her family. Even right up until she passed on, she defended me. She never deserted me.
I'm telling you to don't bloody dig it this way. Bloody. How many times I'm telling you that?
The lioness defends her cubs as they're reared in an atmosphere of shocking brutality.
Don't you bloody dare!
Oh, I'd been belted, knocked unconscious, you know. I see it as a nightmare. And it did affect me. I had psychiatric problems from the age of, I would say, 10 to 12, 13. I couldn't live at home. I couldn't stand all that fighting and, sort of, it was violent. It was violent.
If you've been too much of a rat bag, well, you're here if you needed hitting. I suppose I thought, Mum would, he would, so like that's just the way it is, isn't it?
Ivan is the 5th child. Then the brothers who've agreed to talk to us, Boris, number 3, George, number 10, Richard, number 12, and David, number 13. And among the girls, Shirley is child number 6. She's particularly close to Ivan. sharing a home with him at the time of the murders. Now there are allegations that Ivan and Shirley's relationship is incestuous.
Did your mother die knowing this yarn?
Yeah.
So people in the family knew?
Oh, yeah. You'd be surprised what people knew.
My go, Richard. Let me have a turn.
Hey, Richard, get off that bike.
The experts tell us that every family is dysfunctional in its own way, though on any test, the Milats are in a league of their own. As Mother Margaret gives birth to one child after another, all the classic signs are present. Few boundaries, no consistency, extreme conflict, and a tribal notion of us and them.
The family was always broke, always did it very hard, became very self-defended. I've actually described it several times as more like the family you read about in southern United States rather than families you read about in Australia. But they were very close for a period of time out of necessity.
Well, I didn't trust my brothers as it was. I watched a couple of my brothers turn on each other with hammers, bricks and things. The family wasn't educated.
The Milats basically were Milats just to themselves. I mean, to say, I wouldn't catch the school bus. I'd run home 3.5 miles without trying to beat the bus home, so I didn't have to ride the bus. If I did there and somebody even looked at me, you know, it was on.
I've got the shotgun. Bow and arrow. Rifle.
Most kids of the era play cowboys and Indians, but the difference is the Milats play with real guns.
I had a slug gun fight with Wally. We're going like this. I nearly got ya. I nearly got ya. And one day I pulled the trigger and Wally caught the smack and slug right in the face here.
I was shot in the face with Alex shot me. We'd play air guns. We'd play with the air guns with. They were high-powered air guns too. We'd play cowboys and Indians with them. It did hurt. It did hurt. Dad come up. He tried to kill Alec at the time, but Alec outran him.
The kids have cause to run, for what everyone remembers most about Stephen Milat are the beatings.
Well, you give your belting all right. Throw across the room and says enough. A belting didn't always pull you in line. He'd throw a shovel or something.
If you did something wrong, like if we pulled tomatoes off and had a tomato fight, saying you get a whack across the head real quick. Tomato steaks, God, whatever you got hit with, that was it.
While the kids recall being occasionally beaten by Mum too, she's mostly a refuge in the cyclone of family life and has a particular soft spot for Ivan.
Certainly Ivan was described as being a favourite with the mother. He would have gone to her for protection, and I've often described Ivan as being somewhat of a mummy's boy.
She didn't believe anything about any members of the family. As far as she's concerned, she didn't believe it, or didn't want to believe it.
A brutal father who beats you, an indulgent mother who thinks you can do no wrong. And all along, the Milat kids are being given conflicting messages, and that is a recipe for trouble. Many of the Milat brothers do turn to drink, and don't need a shrink to explain Ivan's tendency to go psycho.
I reckon if I got $1 for every time he snapped, I'd be a millionaire. He'd carry on stupid. He used to put his foot through the cupboards. Ivan went off too much. I remember Alex saying it, a few of us said it, watch out one day the way he is, he might kill somebody.
In the Milat family, the means to kill becomes an important part of everyday life. It's not just the high-powered cars and motorcycles that will eventually kill one sister, Margaret, and maim a brother, David. It's also an obsession with guns.
It was cars and guns. Then anyone could own a gun then. I had a 325, I had all sorts of guns. It's like the V8 engine. It's power. It's power. It's the grunt, what it can stop, what it can do. what destruction it can do. I think that's what a lot of people own guns for, not just the Milats.
Even when they're declared illegal, the Milats don't allow anyone to come between them and their guns.
Like when I got, say, a SKS rifle, 30-shot automatic, they sold them down the gun shop. John Howard made them illegal after we brought them and said, hand them all back in.
Did you?
No.
You didn't?
Why would I? He only said that. So did Adolf Hitler said, hand all the guns in. And I can't hand it all in just for everybody like that.
So, as kids and adults, the Milats celebrate the bullet.
Shoot a dog or a cat. Actually, I'm still doing that here. Because they're a pest. You've got to keep your own animals at bay.
But even as they fire away themselves, the brothers begin to notice something different about Ivan.
The only one that could shoot anything and everything was Ivan. He'd go down to that block of ground down there and I don't care how small it was, it could be a frog or whatever, it got a bullet.
And as he becomes an adult, when it comes to sex, nothing gets in Ivan's way. Ivan Milat grows up knowing no boundaries at all, no respect for the normal conventions of family life, and he thinks nothing of moving in on his brother's wives and girlfriends.
Marilyn, Maureen, Karen. How many more wives you want to steal, Ivan? You treat him like shit.
He went in and started sleeping with me wife, but he was also sleeping with Wally's wife.
I do what I want, when I want. Treat him mean, keep him keen.
Upset, same as anyone else would be. Basically very upset. And I do believe Ivan fathered my last child.
Normal people don't have sex.
Well, maybe
with
you
their
should.
family.
Maybe you'd get a bit.
You have no idea how this affects us, do you? You don't give a stuff about you or anybody.
Neither of Ivan Milat's parents is ever in trouble with the law, but it's a gene they don't pass on to most of their 10 sons.
We're just a big family getting in trouble. Animals let loose.
It's like pretty close there, so like at times when it, I guess times you want to blow their heads off or kill them, but it's just the way it is for families, isn't it?
They were a pain in the neck, to be quite honest with you, around the place. They were forever in trouble and forever causing trouble.
Bill Newell, the local cop, remembers arresting Ivan Milat for his first offence as an adult, the robbery of a local club in 1962.
Took the lock off the front door and jemmied the safe off the wall, took it away and took it out the back of Rossmore somewhere or other and chopped it to pieces with an axe and helped themselves to what money was inside there.
At first, the smash and grabs and break and enters are all a bit of a lark. But then things get a lot more serious as armed hold-ups become part of the Milat criminal repertoire.
Well, I did a lot of stupid things. Got in the fights, picked up objects. Because we're right out of control. Or somebody's going to end up in jail for a long time here. Because they're out of control too often. Big power surges.
For me, I was a young fella. I was only 15. I busted for armed robbery, so just seemed that was a normal thing. Back then, a lot of armed robberies, a lot of people's brothers busted for armed robbery.
Here we go again.
Yeah, I wonder what we'll find this time.
Look at this place.
What a dump.
When the police come calling, the hardest part is getting past Mum.
If they wanted to grab you or hit you or something like that, yeah, she'd step in. There you can see. But if they were just being cool, wanting to talk, she was okay.
Not you lot again.
Miss Milat, we're here to see one of your sons.
Which one?
Ivan.
He's not here, okay? He's not here. Just go away. Just get out.
He'd go there.
Can we please come and have a look?
No,
Mrs. Milat would front the door and say, he's not here, I don't know where he is. She'd tell kids, And we went past her and we went into the bedroom and Ivan's hiding under a bed in the far corner of the room and pulled him out from under the bed and I said to him, what are you doing there? He said, I'm looking for my shoes.
Well, I remember getting booked there one time, and Mum says, "Where are you going?" So I've got to go and pay a police fine down in Granville. Mum screamed out through the house, "George is going to the police station at Granville, who's got the fine to pay?" And everybody come out. So what's this? I turned into a mailman.
The family eventually moves from the acreage at Moorebank to this house in Sydney's outer west, and from one police jurisdiction to the next.
When we heard that they were going, we went up to the shop and bought a sympathy card and posted it across to the detectives at Lidcombe, telling them to expect the worst. And our loss was their gain.
Warning the new local police about the Milats is in order, for as Ivan goes in and out of prison, things suddenly get much darker. 20 years before the Belanglo murders, Ivan shows a taste for kidnapping and rape against the same kind of targets in the same place. He picks up 2 girls hitchhiking south from Sydney and takes them into the forest.
There are a number of elements that seem as though they were the run-up to later events.
What are we doing here? What are you doing?
He was going to have sex with one of them at least, and if they didn't have sex with him, he would kill them.
I'll kill you if you don't have sex with me!
He did have sex with them. What was interesting, and I think is interesting for the facts of the later murders, is that one of the women was on the back seat and he told her not to look at him while he carried out the attack.
No! Shut up! Why are you looking at me? Don't look at me! Turn around!
Now, the fact that he didn't want women or anyone looking at him while he was having sex with one of his victims, I think can explain why there were 2 crime scenes at most of the later scenes.
Remarkably, Ivan is acquitted. The jury's persuaded that the alleged victim is a willing participant and he walks free. And this gives him the idea that he'll be able to beat the system again.
But he beat the charge in a way that courts today would not allow. The 2 women involved in this matter were lesbians, and in effect the proceedings revolved around their own sexual inclinations.
Quite frankly, stuffed their evidence badly and admitted that it was a consensual act. I never know whether it was or was not, you never know that, but the jury found him not guilty.
And it was put to them, but you would rather have sex with a man, wouldn't you? And one of the women said, look, that might have affected her when Ivan tried to force himself on her. And there was that sort of doubt, and it was a pretty nasty affair, and the jury quit.
Ivan Milat's defence lawyer is the flamboyant Sydney solicitor, the late John Marsden.
And he, I think, had an awful lot of remorse about the tactics he used in the case, John Marsden himself being gay. I think in his book he describes it as the worst thing he ever did in legal practice.
I can't believe Ivan raped that girl, I really can't.
But while Ivan Milat escapes another jail term, something's about to happen that makes him lucky to escape with his life.
He's a bloody disgrace.
In a startling twist, the person who's given him up to police pursuing him for the rape is his lover, Marilyn. She's the wife of his brother Boris, and Boris forces her to dob him in as he rages over their continuing affair.
Yeah, no! Right now!
While angry that the family code has been broken, Father Stephen understands when Boris tells him why.
And Dad said I should kill him when I told him about that. He said, you should? He said he deserves to die for betraying you like he did with me wife. He said he deserves to die. He said, but he's my son, so I don't want you to do it.
At first, Boris complies with his father's wishes, but the hatred welling in him finally spills over.
I walked up the path. Dad and Mum were all sitting around the table. Got the gun, fully loaded, 9mm, and I'm pointing it at this guy, straight at him. But every time I went to go to shoot, Mum would walk in front of him. He looked straight at me. He must have been able to see me, and he stayed as cool as a cucumber. And here I've got this thing pointing at him no further than 4 metres away. And I could have shot him stone dead. I couldn't do it. Because there's a light burning in my soul. There mightn't be one in his, but there's one in mine.
In the late 1980s, Ivan is laying tar for the Department of Main Roads when hitchhikers begin to go missing travelling south from Sydney. We know now that he killed 7 people between 1989 and 1992. Melbourne friends Deborah Everest and James Gibson, German Simone Schmidl, German couple Anja Hapschied and Gabor Neugebauer, and the British girls Joanne Walters and Caroline Clark. When they find the bodies, the police are struck by the savagery the killer inflicts. He even decapitates Anja Hapschied. This is not about sex, but control, a reflection of Ivan's turmoil about the women in his own life.
Whenever he was in what he regarded as a dominating and controlling relationship with a woman, he seemed okay. But whenever he lost that situation, or never had that situation, there are indications that he reverted to violence against women and men in quite nasty ways.
When it comes to women, Ivan likes to keep it in the family. He has lengthy affairs with the wives of his brothers Boris and Wally, and then marries a 3rd woman, his cousin's girlfriend. She walks out on him in 1987, tired of his brutal treatment.
My view of Ivan was that he was never a person who you would describe as had a romantic relationship or a loving relationship, but rather it was one of control and him being in control. There was one occasion I can recall where we were told how his wife had disagreed with him in front of a friend. Ivan dragged his wife into a bedroom, pulled a gun out, put it to her head and said, "If you ever do that again, that is embarrass me in front of friends, I'll shoot you."
Before Ivan's wife finally leaves, she's again exposed to Ivan's unique brand of charm.
Ivan and his wife were driving along and he just said to his wife, with no prompting at all, "Oh, you see those hitchhikers?" And his wife said, "Yes." And he says, "You know what's going to happen to them, don't you?" And she said, "No." He said, "They're going to be killed and rooted." Now, you can become too pedantic, I guess, but what I found interesting in that statement is he used the word killed first and then the sexual assault later.
You think he might have had sex with these people after they were dead?
I think there are some indications to support that.
But the 2 women in the family Ivan adores and places on a pedestal above all others are his mother and one of his sisters. Now there's a new revelation from within the family that takes this sordid saga to a whole new level. Child number 10, George Milat, says that Ivan was having sex with his younger sister, Shirley.
From what I know of it, yeah.
For how long and under what circumstances, do you know?
Oh, I don't know.
Are we talking years here?
Could be.
We were told that he's in a very, very close relationship with Shirley. We understood that there had been some incest in the family, precisely with whom and at what points we were never clear on.
And I believe brothers were mucking around with Shirley.
Okay, so you've confirmed that Ivan was mucking around, as you say, with Shirley.
Yeah.
You said brothers.
Yeah.
One or more than one? Other?
There's more than one.
No, that wouldn't have morally been capable. That would have been immoral. Shirley had other people in her life.
So you don't believe that?
Not one for 1 second.
Yeah, what's possible? Everything's possible.
Why would you think that was possible? Because for most people...
They're 2 people.
A brother and sister having sex would be terrible.
Would it? If you think about them 2 guys over there, is that any nicer? Even if they're strangers, two blokes. Is that any nicer, two blokes doing it? Yeah, to me, what's the difference, one or the other? If you're doing it with your sister or your mate up the road.
Richard Milat insists he's never had sex with Shirley.
I didn't. I know that. I know that is a fact. I never.
You're not one of them?
No, I'm not one.
Boris is a dick. I'm going to punch him in the face, I swear to God.
It's just your brother.
But to the experts, George's revelation comes as no surprise.
No need to get rolled.
I think incest in families of this nature is more the rule than the exception. You're well aware of the hillbilly story of the girl, a virgin being a girl that can run faster than her brothers.
We can't get Shirley's side of the story because she dies after a long illness in 2003. But what makes this more than just gossip is that some suspect she was Ivan's accomplice, present at some or all of the killings. More than 30 years after he successfully defends Ivan Milat against rape charges, lawyer John Marsden makes a sensational claim shortly before his own death.
I don't think Ivan did it alone, and I've said, and I'm on public record, that if any of his family were involved, his sister, who's now deceased, had a very close relationship with him. At the end of the day, yes, I think he had someone with him, but were never his brothers, never his brothers.
Shirley does live with Ivan for a time, and if incest is occurring, it may well have put him in a position of control.
It would give a special relationship and a tendency perhaps to act together.
His sister was living in the same house as him, where all the gear was. His sister, there were books in the house on serial murders. You know, you can't, when a person is committing such horrific murders, share the deepest of life with them in the same house and not have some inkling something's going on.
But the police never take John Marsden's claim seriously.
He was dying of cancer. He wasn't far off dying. He was heavily sedated for the treatment of cancer, and I suspect heavily sedated by some other influences.
You mean other drugs?
Other drugs. And I think to take his comments in those circumstances, one would have to be very careful.
And the family says Shirley specifically denied any involvement or knowledge of the killings before she died.
People used to think that they were living together.
So she must have known.
You must have known, you must have known. Yeah, and people used to say that I must have been there. I must have been me.
And?
But I weren't there.
But the case against Richard Milat is much stronger. He has much more to explain. For a start, how does Joanne Walter's sleeping bag wind up in his shed?
Yeah, they're saying that we had a sleeping bag and they're saying it was hers. Yeah, I know, I can see where you're coming.
But do you accept that you had this stuff that belonged to the backpack?
No, I don't accept that at all.
But this was their property that was found on your property.
No, but this is my shirt. Now your shirt looks just like my shirt, is it? It didn't have your name on it. Nothing had their name.
So you're denying that all of this stuff...
All of this stuff?
Which was accepted in the case as belonging to the backpackers and was found at your place, you're saying it wasn't their stuff at all?
Yeah, it weren't their stuff. They'd arrested me. Them people are just not that nice. They'd have arrested me.
Did Ivan give you these things after the event?
No.
So how come this stuff was all found at your place?
I moved from my mum's house down to here, and I just took it all out the cupboards. Mum said anything was in them cupboards, I took it all.
All right, so the stuff belonging to the backpackers was in a cupboard
at home.
At your mother's home?
Possibly, yeah. If you believe that was their stuff.
And then there's what Richard tells his workmates.
Stabbing a woman is like cutting a loaf of bread.
Yeah.
Did you say that?
Naturally.
To know something like that, you'd have to have done it,
That's
wouldn't
right.
you? So you've stabbed a woman?
Never stabbed anybody.
By late 1993, the net is closing in on Ivan Milat.
Oh my God, what's that? Oh, God.
God, what is that?
A year earlier, two bushwalkers stumble across the bodies of Joanne Walters and Caroline Clark, who vanished 5 months before. And then the forest gradually yields the remains of Ivan's other victims. The Melbourne Friends, Deborah Everest and James Gibson. The German, Simone Schmidl. And the German couple, Gabor Neugebauer and Anja Hapschied. A police task force, headed by Clive Small, sets up a special hotline.
There was a flood of information, as you'd appreciate, occurs in these cases. The Milat family was named in several of those pieces of information, but not in ways that would put them as number one on the priority list.
But if the police don't put two and two together at the time, some of the family does.
I thought about things like this. Would you be surprised if your brothers were in it? After all your life of being in trouble, well, nothing surprised me anymore.
As soon as they started to find the remains of these poor people, that's when I clicked in. I did nothing about it. It clicked in.
You knew it was Ivan?
I knew it was Ivan.
Do you think anyone else in the family knew what he was doing?
Some of them did.
George Milat says he didn't, but even if he did, doubts whether he'd have broken the Milat code of silence.
And if I'd have dubbed him in and found out it was me, where would I have stood in the family?
As the investigation progresses, there are several key breakthroughs. Police establish that the same gun, a Ruger rifle, is used to kill both Caroline Clark and Gabor Neugebauer. Batch numbers on ammunition boxes found near Gabor's body lead police to a gun shop that sold them to a man using the name Ivan. And then police learn of Ivan Milat's trial for abduction and rape more than 20 years before.
Once we found out about that, and we looked at the facts of the 71 instance and the circumstances of the later murders and saw a number of similarities, it certainly heightened our interest in both the Milat family and in Ivan.
But it takes human evidence to seal Ivan's fate. It's a call to the police hotline from the United Kingdom from the one who got away.
Right, this is a hold-up! This is a hold-up, relax!
3.5 years before, hitchhiker Paul Onions has the same terrifying experience as the others when he's picked up by the man calling himself Bill. But unlike them, he escapes.
I heard him shout, "Stop else I'll shoot, stop else I'll shoot." And then I just heard the gun go off. And that was like a massive jolt to your system, like you knew it was for real then, like, you know, oh God, really panicking then.
The local police treat it as an attempted robbery, but the penny drops for Paul back home when he hears about the discovery of the bodies.
So that's when I decided to speak to somebody then. I just got in touch with the embassy and the Australian embassy, and they just gave me a telephone number in Sydney.
The task force flies him back to Australia and shows him 13 pictures of men with moustaches. Twice he picks number 4, Ivan Milat.
I went through all the pictures, and that was the one that gave me initial reaction. It made me uneasy when I looked at it, and then when I looked closer I said to him, that's the person who I think I met that day.
Ivan, I don't think even at the time he was arrested, believed for one moment we were going to get the evidence to charge him and then later convict him. And I think there was a sense in which Ivan actually was enjoying this arrest. These police have come to arrest me for something I did, but they'll never prove it, so I'm still in control of the situation.
But the evidentiary smoking gun, parts of a Ruger rifle, are found hidden in a wall cavity in Ivan's house. Ballistic tests prove beyond doubt it fired the bullets that killed Caroline Clark. Also in the house, victims' possessions and a kidnapper's tools of trade.
Ivan had literally an Aladdin's cave of property belonging to the victims, of ropes and tape and that had been found around the victims' arms and legs and so on, had been used to bind them.
I just can't get the idea that Ivan's is set up or framed for this job when, I say there's more stuff found around there than what you'd find in a hardware store.
But for the rest of the family, and especially Ivan's mother, there is scorn and disbelief.
She flew off. He was innocent again. None of us were ever guilty.
I think all mothers will protect their sons. It's just that a lot of them will give up under a certain pressure. Mum didn't give up even when the bodies were turning up.
At his trial, Milat's lawyers try to shift the blame to two of his brothers, Richard and Wally. They deny any involvement, but Richard has said things to other people that leave him wide open to suspicion.
You allegedly said, quote, "There's more bodies out there, they haven't found the two Germans yet."
No, I wouldn't have said that. Well, I might have said that too.
You did?
I might have said that.
How could you have known that unless you were there or Ivan had told you?
This is how I can say it. When you go up the bush today, do you think there's anybody dumped in the bush today who was dead? Only normal. They were all missing. You found a couple of bodies and now you haven't found the two Germans. What would you say? You read the paper every afternoon.
And then there are the backpackers' things found at Richard's place, a tent and sleeping bags belonging to the murdered British girls. As Richard tells it, they're all really his things and were there all along.
Amazing coincidence, that weren't their tent, that was my tent. The blue tent was mine, the 3-man tent was mine.
Caroline Clark's bedroll was your bedroll?
No, I don't know. I never had Caroline Clark's bedroll here, but...
Well, you did, according to the police.
Yeah, that's the police. They said a lot of things.
You had Joanne Walters' sleeping bag here too?
Yeah.
You had Caroline Clark's Ultimate brand sleeping bag here. You had poles and other accessories belonging to Caroline Clark.
How would they know a pole or a rope would belong to their tent? Just think about that. A tent pole, how would you know who would that belong to?
However unconvincing it may all sound, the fact remains that Richard Milat hasn't been charged with any offence relating to the murders.
We found nothing to suggest that any other person was involved.
At all?
At all.
The court accepted I had nothing to do with it. Otherwise they'd have charged me, wouldn't they?
But the two-killer theory persists, not the least because the presiding judge in his trial said it was inevitable that Ivan was not alone.
I simply think that it is almost certain that Ivan carried out the murders by himself and that all the evidence strongly points in that direction. If you were to ask me, is it possible, even remotely possible, that there was a second offender, I would say I can't say that that's not the case.
Who helped rob the banks with him? He didn't do that on his own all the time either. Didn't rob shops and banks on his own.
And it would have been the same with the killer?
I don't reckon he did it on his own either.
And so the speculation continues. We know Paul Onions is picked up by one person, Ivan. But is there someone else waiting inside the Belanglo turnoff, as is canvassed at the trial? Was Shirley Milat sometimes bait, making it more likely hitchhikers would get into the car? Speculation is all it is.
Ivan still believes that he's in control of the situation. He regularly talks about another appeal. I mean, he's had quite a few attempted appeals, but they've all been dismissed. And this, I think, goes to his belief that he's still in control and that one day the gates are going to open and he'll walk out.
Ivan is fortified by the support he still gets from most of the family, their unwavering belief in his innocence.
No, I don't believe all of it.
And what will it take for you to believe it?
For him to say it?
I believe, from what I've been told, he's committed up to 29 of them. And what he did is just work of an animal.
But Goulburn's most notorious inmate is in for a shock, a loss of control where it'll hurt most. To this day, Ivan Milat has never publicly admitted his guilt, but brother George says he did, to the one person who meant more than anyone else to him, his mother. As George tells it, their mother, Margaret Milat, is nearing the end of her life in 2001 and wants to know the truth. Finally, in a visiting room at Supermax, she gets it.
Next time she goes down, she comes back, and I was having some lunch with Mum. Across the table, and I looked at her and I says, Mum, did he tell you something you didn't want to hear? He admitted he was guilty. How do you feel? Mummy's out of the way. You can rest up.
But he definitely told your mum that he did it, did he?
I asked her.
Because all along he said he hadn't done it.
You're never guilty. You're never guilty no matter what you've done. Prove it. How do you know it's me? She said she was disgusted and disappointed. She wasn't really over surprised.
Why was that, do you think?
Constantly in trouble too much.
In the family, George's disclosure has been greeted with dismay. There's acknowledgement that Ivan and his mother were especially close.
She would have told Georgie. She had a close relationship with Georgie.
But total disbelief that Ivan would ever confess.
I don't believe Ivan would say that. And if he did say it, he wouldn't say it to Mum.
So he wouldn't have been telling my mum, it would only upset her really bad. So even if it was true, he wouldn't have said that at all to her.
But George's account rings true, says the man who put Ivan Milat behind bars.
The mother went down there, basically said, look, I'm dying, I need to know the truth, and Ivan confessed to her. Ivan always was a mummy's boy in many ways. I think that bond and the fact that this was not long before she died, would have a big impact on Ivan, and I don't think he'd be able to lie to her.
What Ivan will make of this story, we can only guess. The man for whom control is everything is seeing the last of his power slip away.
His mental condition in the jail is deteriorating. He certainly doesn't look as young and fit as he did when he was arrested, and he's certainly ageing. And you can see signs of his mental deterioration in the self-harm that he's done to himself over the years. Cutting off his finger, swallowing pins and needles and so on. And that self-harm comes with, I think, a deterioration and an increasing frustration.
Ivan's murders have ripped the Milat family apart. They're now at war. The battle lines drawn between the majority who still think Ivan is innocent and those convinced he's guilty.
I have seen more hatred in that family come towards me than I've experienced in 30 years.
You know why that is, because you've broken the code.
I've broken the code, and I'm a creep, and I'm all of those things.
To much of the family, Boris is a traitor, still motivated by revenge for Ivan stealing his wife.
And I'd say today he hates him more today than he hated him 10 years ago. Because he thinks all his troubles come from that too.
But for Boris, it's about finally burying the Milat family code of lies and confronting the ugly truth.
I hear Ivan till I go bloody crazy. And I hear all this denial. And they know that there's people out there that lost their lives. And the mothers and fathers sitting there and their lives might as well have been killed as well because they're dead, inside. And we were all brought up the same. I'm not out killing anyone. So you can't blame the family, you can't blame mum or dad because I didn't do it. Dad used to say that 1 in 10 is mad. 1 in 10. Boris, be careful where you go. 1 in 10 man is mad, he wants to kill you. And here we have 1 in 10. He is a psychopath, that's all there is to it. The Milats need to accept that.